Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody. We are opening the new book of Dvarim, which is called also Mishneh Torah. And there are a few things in Sefer Dvarim that we already learned about, and the Torah is telling it to us again. And the question is why? We have also new things, but generally speaking, this book is like a book that gives us the instruction how to deal with coming into Eretz Israel, what is connected directly to the way we should live our life in Eretz Israel. And the book starts with a rebuke, that a part of the rebuke is like in clues, but a part of the rebuke is really very hard to hear. And the question is, first of all, what is the reason for this rebuke, and why a part of it is why with the clues, like they tell us the places that Moshe Rabbeinu was standing there, and the real truth is that if we look and try and understand what are those places, they're really not mentioned anywhere. So Rashi explains that each one of those places is really a clue about a sin that Am Yisrael did while they were in the desert for those 40 years. For example, when it's written, Di Zahav, Zahav is gold, we're talking about the golden calf. And so on, like in the desert, what they did in the desert, all the sins they did, wanting to go back to Egypt. And then, like, you have this rebuke, this hard, tough rebuke, for example, when we're talking about the spies. That here is also very interesting that when we read the story of the spies in Sefer Bamidbar, it looked like on the surface that God is the one who is sending the mirage to tour the land and see and do the job. But here we see definitely that the idea of sending the miraglim and checking what's happening in Eretz Israel comes from the people. And then it's written this terrible thing that they did when the spies, the 12 miraglim, went into Eretz Israel and came back and told Am Israel, 10 of them told Am Israel that it's a terrible country, it's a country that eats the people, Eretz Ochelet Yoshvea, and we all know the story. But here, it's written from a different point of view, which is teaching us, first of all, a very interesting lesson. In life, sometimes when you want to rebuke somebody, when you want to fix something, sometimes you have to be very clear about it and confront the problem and tell the guy or the lady or the congregation exactly what is the problem. But sometimes if you use this method, you can do the damage, you can do the opposite thing. Instead of fixing thing, you make it even worse. It's, for example, like I can never forget this. Once in shul, people were speaking behind, and one of the congregation came to them and says to them, "Stop speaking," like in a very tough way. And you know what they did to him? They took their tongue out to him, "Otziu lo lashon," and laughed at him. Why? Because they were ashamed of what they did, but the way he approached them made them to go against it. Instead of fixing it, they made it even worse to show that they are like on top of things. But if he would have gone to them and told them, please, bevakasha, we're davening here and it's really disturbing. Can you maybe lower your voice or maybe understand that it's disturbing other people? If you would have done it in this way, or even like looking at them and like nodding or something, like a clue, give them a clue that you're disturbing, it would have been much better. But sometimes you have to tell the truth and confront it right away. And this is exactly what we're talking here at the beginning. Because if you want to live your life in a proper way and have the good influence on the environment, on the society, you have to know when to speak, how to speak. Ele advarim, those are the things, those are the dvarim can mean things and can also mean talk, dibur. And we all know, as we talked about it last week, the importance of the way we talk. And this here again, we learn that talking has an influence, but you have to know how to talk. and how to pronounce things, because sometimes it gets a whole different meaning, and instead of achieving what you want to achieve, you achieve the opposite thing. So that's the first lesson. We're not going to go into all the things that we are seeing in the rebuke that we have here. But Baruch Hashem, we're opening the new book, and here we have to understand another interesting thing. The Torah is not a history book and not, let's say, stories. It's much more than it. And we have to learn from everything that we see in the Torah how to behave and what to do. The Rav Adam Sinai puts a very interesting point. There are two ways in life to look at things. There is, or if you want to make it more understandable, you know, a young guy, he looks into the future. He's got no past, and he is all in the future to do this and that and that. An old guy, he looks at the past, because now he cannot do the things he did in the past, and he's got a very glorious past or whatever. So he always talks about the past. And this is an interesting thing, because, you know, when I was a young guy, I used to look at people my age and like they're old people. And today I realized how wrong I was, because feeling old or feeling young, it's a matter of feeling. It's not how you look. It's not a matter of age. You have old people that feel young, and you have young people that feel old, and you can see the way they talk. If they always talk about the future, they still have it in them. They want to go on. If they only talk about the past, and normally they will talk about the past of their past, like me, I did this, I did that. This is like showing off, and it's like talking about things that sometimes it may be, who knows if it's all 100% truth. That's a different issue. But definitely there is nothing in there that is going to help you in the future. For example, we all know this thing, you have to learn from experience. So I've got an experience I want to teach you. But a lot of times when somebody wants to teach us something from his experience, we find out that he really doesn't talk about the experience, but he talks about himself. I did this, I did that, and I did that. Okay, that's not the way. So this is a long, and let's say this is something we can talk about for days. But the interesting thing is, says Rav Adam Sinai, that we need to have the combination. Sometimes you have to look at the past, and sometimes you have to look at the future. Now, people sometimes, why don't they look at the future? Because they don't want to move themselves. They don't want to do things. In other words, it's a laziness. And from laziness, you talk about what you did, but you don't talk about what you want to do, because you don't want to do anything. And this is laziness. In order to make things, you have to have the future in front of you, to want to do things and to move out of your comfort zone and do things. And that's got nothing to do with age, especially when we talk from a spiritual way, because we all know that some people that are very, let's say, 100 years even. I knew somebody that was 103 when he died. Until the last day of his life, he used to learn, and he was so full that you could talk with him like, and now nobody believed that he's 103, because this kept him going and moving, because he always was thinking about what am I going to do tomorrow. And he woke up and he started learning. That's the right way to look at things. In other words, the Torah is telling us, those are the things. Look at this and understand and learn the lesson from the past in order to make a better future. This is the idea of the destruction of the temple. The temple was destroyed, and as long as it's not built, we are to be blamed. There is no others. We are the one, because building the temple is not something physical. It's a spiritual thing. We have to build it from the spiritual point of view. We have to change ourselves. This all happened, we all know, from sinat chinam, hatred. People hating each other with no reason. And to fix it is also loving each other with no reason. Unfortunately, we just now were talking about taking our shiur back to have, let's say, to sit in the same room and talk about the parsha, and we remember how it was. And this is exactly also the power of the past, the power of remembering, because sometimes there are things that you cannot do, but you can remember them, and you have at least something of the enjoyment that you used to have. But before the corona, I was going to China, we were traveling and doing things. Today, they're only memories. But also as memories, they've got a certain value. And this is exactly this. We have to understand we need the past in our life. And of course, we need the future. But the thing is to understand and realize the way we look at things. So we have to understand that the way only looking at the past, that's a point of view of I did what I did and there's nothing more I can do. Never be like this. From the other side, to look only on the future and not taking your experience from the past and what happened in the past and what we had in the past is also stupid, because you can build on top of it. There are a lot of times when I learn, I say this thing, you know, you have a library in your room, and let's say the father or the mother, they can reach till the, let's say, almost the top, but not to the top of the library because it's too high. They need a ladder in order to climb up and get to the last shelves. Now they can reach what a kid cannot reach, because the kid can also only, let's say, get to the third level of the library. The parents, they can get to the 10th level or to 11th level. But if the parents put the child on his back, on his shoulders, now the kid can get higher than the father or the mother. Does it mean that he is taller? Of course not. He is using the height of his parents in order to get higher, but it doesn't make him taller. Or if we want to talk from the point of view of knowledge, we are sitting on the shoulders of our ancestors, of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech. And this what makes us what we are, not because of us, but because of our past, because we are on the shoulders of the past, climbing up. And this way we can achieve much more in life. Today, people, unfortunately, have so many tools, sophisticated tools. And the point of view has changed to now I want it. I want it now, in 2 minutes. We've got no patience for nothing. We're running quickly. And also we are so involved in ourselves. And this is exactly the point that led us to Sinat Chinam. If we are only concerned about ourselves, don't care about others, that's exactly the point that we have to fix. I was walking the other day near a bus station. There were 2 girls sitting there and taking pictures of each other and of themselves, which they called selfie. Selfie. How selfish is this world today? They missed the bus because they were so busy with themselves, with the selfie, with the selfishness, that they missed the bus. We don't want to miss the bus. We know better. We know that we have to be here for others. We are building a future for Am Yisrael. We want to build the temple again. We want to fix what we did wrong and connect ourselves to the generation before in order to achieve the talent, the power that will lead us to a better future, to the building of the temple. Rebuild it. The meaning of it And this leads me to another thing I want to talk about. As we said and we start, things don't always look the way that they don't, we don't understand things looking only on the outside. And sometimes we need to understand the deepness of things. And also the way the Torah is talking to us sometimes with clues and sometimes clear, and there's always a reason. For example, talking about the sin of the mirage. After the Meraglim came back, the spies came back and told Am Yisrael what they did. And Am Yisrael were crying. And by the way, they're crying, as they say, this sin, At Hashem Otanu, God hates us, and that's why he took us here into the desert. And this is really sinat chinam. God that loves us so much to say this sinat Hashem Otanu. And they say that this is exactly the point where everything happened. God says, you cried for nothing, I'm going to give you a reason to cry. And this is exactly the day of Tisha B'Av. But there is something more in it. Because why was the temple destroyed? Because of sinat chinam. And it says, B'sinat Hashem Otanu. This also was sinat chinam. Saying that God hates them and God loves them. But this is the, let's say, the seed that developed in year to become the sinat chinam that we know. Because hating God means hating your friend. Hating your friend means hating your God. Loving your friend is loving your God. Loving God is loving your friend. And this all started on that night that they were crying for nothing. Crying and saying that God hates them. And this is sinat chinam. Because who hates who is like Rashi said, Am Yisrael were hating God. Also, we don't want to go into it. This is an idea. This is not really something that we have to go into it and understand it. We have to understand the idea behind sinat chinam. And there is another interesting thing. We have to understand that we do what God tells us to do. Even if we think different, we still do what God tells us to do and not what we think is the right thing to do. And this we also learn from the Meraglim. In our parasha is written that after the Meraglim came back and the disaster happened, and God said, okay, and punished the Meraglim and punished them, there was a plague and that. So people the next morning says, okay, we are doing tshuva, we want to go into Eretz Israel. But Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, no, this was yesterday. Today, you cannot go into Eretz Israel. You have to stay in the desert. But they said, no, we want to go. We want to do the mitzvah. This is no mitzvah. God is not with you. And this is very interesting because the Torah tells us, so they went to go into Eretz Israel. And what happened is the Amorite came and chased them and killed them. ויצא האמורי היושב בהר ההוא לקראתם וירדפו אתכם כאשר תעשינה הדבורים ויקטו אתכם בשעיר עד חורמה. And they did what the beings do. What does it mean? What's the connection between the beings and what happened to Am Yisrael when they tried to go in? But with the beings, there are a few interesting points. Rav Zalman Sorokin says, when you go into a hive, I think it's called, when you go to bees, you wear special clothes. And you have these things that bring smoke, and from the smoke, all the bees run away, and then you just take the honey. Eretz zavat chalav udvash. Our land is the land of milk and honey. Now, if you come in as the balabai with the smoke, which was God is in front of you, chasing and how do you say, chasing all the enemy and sending them away, and they run away from the smoke from God with the Yomit Arona Edut and all this. We go as a Barabait in. But let's go back to the hive, to the bees. If somebody wants to steal the honey, he cannot go with smoke, because if he go with smoke, the Barabait will see him, the owner will see him and will come and kill him, or chase him, or hit him. definitely he wouldn't get into the hive to take the honey. So what does he do? He hasn't got the special clothes that the guy has from the hive, and he cannot also go with the smoke to chase out the bees. So what's happening is he comes and the bees are there. He tries to take the honey, and the bees chase him and bite him and sting him. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu told them. Says, if you're going in, you don't go with the smoke, you don't go with God, so you are with no protection. That's one side of the picture. But the other side is, let's think, the spies came and said, if we are going into Eretz Israel, we are going to be killed. There are strong people, there are bad people, Eretz Ochelet Yoshvea, Anashim Azim. And what happens now? They go into Eretz Israel, and that's what happens. They are being killed. So who was right? Was God right, or the Meraglim were right? As v'sholom, yes. If we look at the picture from this point of view, the Meraglim were right. It's impossible to go into Eretz Israel. Here, they tried to go, they did tshuva, they went into Eretz Israel, and they were killed. What did God do? What happens to a bee when it stings a man? It dies a few minutes later. And that's exactly what was happening. God wanted to show everybody that the power is with God. So God says, you don't go in because you're going to be killed. You have got no protection. That's one side. And they were killed. But anybody who touched somebody from Am Israel, like the bee, he died a few minutes later. So everybody saw the picture. Yes, they were killed. But also those who touched them were killed with the hand of God. So it showed that who is in control? God. And this is also a statement. When God tells you to go in, you go in. When God tells you not to go in, you don't go in. It's not a mitzvah anymore. A mitzvah is mitzvah, metzuveh ve'oseh. Mitzvah, you are ordered by God to do it. So if God tells you the holiness is not in, if we run that in the Eretz Israel, the holiness is in listening to God. You can go into the Holy Land and disgrace it and abuse it. Ele hadvarim. All those things in our parsha are to tell us the way to go into Eretz Israel in a proper way. To look at the past, what we did wrong, and fix it for the future. Have the eyes of the young and the eyes of the old. Combine it together to achieve the goal of building the temple again. As we said, we hope that we will listen to God and go in the way of God. And as God destroyed the temple because of sinat chinam, we will start with a'avat chinam. We will look at the mistakes we did in the past, learn from them. We also will look at the glory of Am Yisrael in the past. This is also something to look at. Our sages, and take their things. And this beautiful combination of learning from the mistakes and learning from the right way to go in the right way, to fix what we made wrong in order to make a better future. And Alevai, that this future will come as soon as possible, and we will see the third temple coming down from heaven to save us from all the terrible things that are happening all around us. Have a nice day.
Alevai. Thank you, Gadi.
Welcome.